Hi, everyone. This is John Daly again with Bernie Goldberg for another episode of the No BS Zone. How are you feeling today, Bernie?
Well, that's not a regular question in this case. I had surgery on my foot a few days ago, and I'm on medication. So
Yeah, we,
I
we,
do,
we
I
thought
do my best.
we should probably throw out that disclaimer in case Bernie says something completely crazy. We'll just blame it on the meds, right, Bernie?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay. Well, just a few things have happened in the news since the last time we talked. There are, of course, several topics to choose from, but the big one, of course, was the assassination attempt last Saturday night on former President Trump. It was a terrible day for the country. Trump fortunately escaped with a very minor injury to his ear. Others were not so lucky. One man was killed protecting his family from the shooter, from the bullets. Two more were critically injured. And in the days since, Bernie, there has been a lot of talk about lowering the political temperature in this country. And I know you have some thoughts on that topic. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's wishful thinking. I don't have very much hope that it's going to succeed. Uh, I've been arguing for God knows how long, and I'm even tired of hearing myself make the argument that the biggest threat to the United States right now is the polarization that we're inflicting upon ourselves. So it's one thing if Joe Biden says he wants to lower the heat, and if Donald Trump says he wants to unify the nation. That's a good start, but they've got to make it happen. And I think there's too many factions that don't want to make it happen. There are politicians who don't want to make it happen because it serves their purpose. They represent districts where if you say Joe Biden was responsible, directly responsible for the assassination attempt, you're not going to get punished. So there's that. There's the media that literally makes money pouring fuel on the fire and dividing Americans. So I think it's a good thought. I don't think it's going to happen. And I'm not saying that with any joy whatsoever.
No, I hear, and I agree with you that very little is going to change. I've written a couple columns for the website since the shooting, in which I make the point that we are in desperate need of some kind of political reset, which is sort of, I guess, what we're talking about. But really, and you really, like you said, you and I have been writing about this for a while, the escalation of political vitriol, because we both see it as a danger to the country. Whether or not this particular shooter was motivated by politics has yet to be shown. At this point, his background seems really more consistent with what we've seen from school shooters in the past. Either way, though, there have been several violent incidents as well as foiled incidents in recent years that were in fact motivated by politics and our overheated political discourse. A few, just to name a few off the bat, the congressional baseball practice where Steve Scalise was shot, the attempt on Brett Kavanaugh, and of course January 6th. None of those things are good. And there have been some questions, Bernie, and I'm interested to get your thoughts on this, about what constitutes reckless and dangerous political rhetoric as opposed to strong, politically defensible rhetoric. A lot of people on the right are now saying that the often repeated charge that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, that inspires violence. Do you agree with that?
Well, let me answer it this way. First of all, we may know in the next 10 minutes, or we may never know what motivated the 20-year-old shooter. And we just may never know. But when you call somebody Hitler long enough, and it's not the village idiots who are calling him Hitler. Who cares what the village idiots have to say? The the magazine in Washington, I'm trying to think of the name of it.
Washington Post?
No, the magazine.
Oh, Washington Examiner?
No, the New Republic. I'm sorry, the New Republic.
Okay.
That's a 100-year-old magazine that had some stature, some respect over those 100 years. Well, they've got a cover of Donald Trump looking like Adolf Hitler, or Adolf Hitler looking like Donald Trump, whichever way you want it. When you have mainstream publications like the Washington Post giving pages to op-ed people, scholars from universities, comparing Donald Trump to Hitler. When you have people on MSNBC, Joy Reid, actually using those words, who do I have to vote for so we don't get Hitler? Well, don't be surprised when somebody tries to shoot Hitler. So that's certainly a bright line. When you call somebody an existential threat to democracy, first of all, it's not true. It just isn't true. And I'm no fan of Donald Trump, but neither he nor Joe Biden is an existential threat to democracy. We had 4 years of each of them, and we still have a democracy. But that's not good either, John. That's not good either. You can criticize somebody's policies. You could say they're not good for the country because they want to raise taxes or they want to lower taxes. But calling somebody Hitler, calling somebody an existential, you know what that means? That means the very existence of a threat to the country. Don't be shocked when people do crazy stuff when you say that. Now, did it happen in this particular case? We don't know. But I'm not shocked when I hear Trump being called Hitler and then somebody shooting Hitler. I'm just not shocked by that. Perhaps I
Right.
should.
Yeah, no, so, I mean, some rhetoric very clearly goes too far. Hitler comparisons, as you said, is one example. The use of the term existential, yeah, that sounds very apocalyptic. The stuff, when people say just kind of boilerplate, Trump is a threat to democracy, stuff like that, I guess I never use that phrase in my commentary, but at the same time, I do not see it. That alone is dangerous. The fact of the matter, and we've both said this many times, is that Donald Trump did try to overturn U.S. democracy to stay in power after the 2020 election. So when someone says that part of it, it doesn't feel so outlandish and over the top. But yeah,
I've actually written in a column that after January 6th, what he did on January 6th and before, trying to subvert the peaceful transfer of power, that is a threat to democracy.
Yeah, absolutely. And others have used that same phrase to describe some of the conduct on the other side, and I think they've done it in some cases with some merit as well.
But Joe Biden makes a speech and says he's a threat to democracy and he must be stopped. Well, what does that mean when Joe Biden uses language that says we need a bullseye on him, and then he says tells Lester Holt, well, I didn't say he should be put in crosshairs. I just said a bullseye. It's wrong. You know what? Words matter, and we have no sense of history in this country. In Dallas, in the night after JFK was elected president, people in Dallas, and not just the crazies in Dallas, not just the crazy right wingers, but respected people in the community who were on the hard right, they vilified JFK. And then guess what happens? Lee Harvey Oswald kills JFK in Dallas. Was he influenced by what he heard? Who knows? But you could connect dots. In Memphis, Martin Luther King was said to be anti-white and anti-American. And then James Earl Ray kills Martin Luther King. Did he read a particular article in a newspaper? Who knows? Who cares? This kind of language is not good for the country, even if we can't prove that some 20-year-old or Lee Harvey Oswald or any of the others had a direct connection to what they read and then acted on it. It's just not good for the country. And I don't see it changing. I want to make that very clear. I don't see it changing. There are too many vested interests in keeping it just the way it is.
No, I agree, and it's another phrase I'm seeing used lately is that 2024 is the final battle, and I think Trump's using that a lot. I think I've heard it on the other side too, but it's not the final battle. It's an election. It's not
Exactly.
the end of our country. But what gets me is it's not really, to me, it's not just these individual sound bites or these little catchphrases we hear. As you started off earlier in this episode, it's the constant drumbeat of the partisan media, of the partisan internet. It amplifies a lot of this outrage, including a lot of it, and I've said this many times, a lot of it's so disingenuous too. The people saying it don't actually believe it. I think there are people, Joe Blow, that hear this stuff and it gets them worked up. So many of the people you see in the media, in the partisan media, the pundits, they just don't buy it. And I've heard this from enough people that work alongside these individuals, and so much of it seems obvious to me too. But it's really, I think our toxic media culture has really shaped a lot of this, and they've done to society what more, quite a bit more than these individual politicians could ever do.
What bothers me about what you just said, I agree with what you said, but what bothers me in particular is not that you have Joy Reid talking about Trump as Hitler, but somebody is paying her, signing her paycheck. And that somebody wears a suit and tie and goes into an office and may have a title of chief executive officer, chief financial officer, or chief something or other. And they have a public company that Wall Street pays attention to. These are the decent people, in quotation marks, the decent people that let that kind of crap happen. And it happens on the right and on the left.
Yeah, it would be great. There are people that, even with a lot of stuff is allowed on the airwaves these days. And I'm sort of surprised by how much people have gotten away with without being fired. Even Fox eventually saw what Tucker Carlson was doing as this, maybe they were worried about getting sued for the defamation. That was probably part of it. But it's like, he had gotten so crazy, and I see people over on the other, and he's super crazy right now, and what he's done since then. But you go back, and there are people on the left who I would put in the same camp as him. On MSNBC, Joy Reid is a good example. Who she still has her job.
Yeah, exactly. This is why I say that I have very little to no hope that calls for unity are going to result in unity. Calls for ratcheting down the heat are going to result in that, because too many people have too many vested interests. Politicians represent districts. Congress people do anyway. And if you say, as a Georgia politician, a Georgia congressman did say, that Joe Biden is directly responsible for the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. Well, you wouldn't say that if you thought the people in your district were going to throw you out of office. So you say it knowing that there's no consequence. Joy Reid says what she says, and Gutfeld on the right says he's just childish. He says stupid things, like Joe Biden is making in his pants. A grown-up doesn't talk that way. But they do it because they know there will be no consequences. They know they're getting paid good salaries to do stuff like that. So while I hold them accountable, I hold the people who sign their paychecks even more accountable.
I agree, and I think the people that really like this, the people that are doing this, like you named some names just now, but they're benefiting off of this outrage that they're helping create. But beyond though, I think I do think about our opponents abroad, across in other countries, Putin, China. They got to be loving this, just seeing how completely just off the charts we are with this stuff.
Yeah, let me use a phrase I've used before. I'm quoting myself. I don't know if that's rude or not, but the unindicted co-conspirator in all of this are the ordinary Americans who are eating it up. The people who elect the moron congressman from Georgia, they're unindicted co-conspirators too if they reelect this idiot who thinks Joe Biden called for the assassination of Donald Trump. The people who watch partisan, hyper-partisan cable news, and they watch it, you know why? Because they like what they're hearing. They like to hear their own biases, their own crazy crap thrown right back at them. They like to hear, they don't want any surprises. They don't want to hear something that makes them feel uncomfortable. They're unindicted co-conspirators too. Sorry, I don't mean to offend any particular person, but anybody who's buying into this garbage is contributing to it. I'm not saying you have blood on your hands because some guy pulled the trigger and almost killed Donald Trump. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying you can do something about it if you wanted to. You could stop watching. You could stop electing these idiots to Congress. You could do things. I don't think people want to do it because they're comfortable with the way it is.
I think one positive thing that can be done and more people should do right now, and it's not going to fix everything, but I really do, and I become more of a believer in this stuff, that you really do have to police the people on your side, on your own side, because you have more sway with them. You know, they're never going to so a lot of these people are so far gone, they're never going to listen to anybody over on the other side, you know, pointing the finger or lecturing them. But
Right.
I think it's important you get to police your own side and both sides. I think I would argue that more of it, as bad as I think the Republican Party and the right has become, I think there are more of us on the right trying to police our side than there is on the left, people trying to police their side. I want to see more of it there.
Well, if you're convinced, if you're on the left and you're convinced that the United States as we know it will die if Donald Trump is elected, because we can't elect Hitler and expect anything good to come of it. Well, where's the policing of that?
Right.
You know, here's the thing. Joe Biden, I'll give you an example. Joe Biden says that we have to lower the heat. Okay, he didn't call Donald Trump Hitler, but the New Republic magazine did. Joe Biden should say he should police his own side. He should say, New Republic is a liberal magazine. I'm a liberal. I, Joe Biden, am a liberal. No good. Don't do this. Don't do this. And on the right, I was on with Bill O'Reilly, and he said, yeah, Fox has its biases, but it's not as bad as MSNBC. Fair enough. Okay.
Mm.
Well, they don't
I
have
don't know about that, but go ahead.
they don't have people up and down the line being as vitriolic as Joy Reid or Joe Scarborough and his gang. But you know what? Here's what I told Bill. I said, yeah, but when people on the right say that Joe Biden called for the assassination of Donald Trump, I don't hear anybody on Fox saying that's crazy. Stop it. Don't do that. They have opinions about everything, but they don't have an opinion on that. So you're right. The right has to police the right and the left has to police the left, and they have to shame these people, but it isn't going to happen. I don't live in fantasy land. I live in the real world, and I'm telling you, the real world eats this stuff up because the people doing it make money doing it. They gain power if they're in politics doing it. And the people absorbing it, consuming it, are unindicted co-conspirators.
Yeah. Well, we talked beforehand about trying to keep this a little shorter, so that's probably a good thing. That positive note right there, Bernie, is probably a good place to wrap things up. Anything else you wanted to add today before we leave?
Let me just add one thought, okay? Donald Trump may win this election one way or the other, but if he really wants to clinch it, he goes to the convention and Bill and I talked about this also, and he says, you know what? We have to unify this country. We have to lower the heat. And I, Donald Trump, have contributed to the problem. I have contributed to the problem, and I am sorry for what I did, and I will do everything I can to make sure I don't perpetuate what I've done in the past. If he does that, election is over. He wins. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that would not only be the right thing to do, it'd also be the politically smart thing to do. Like you say, but yeah, I mean, he's obviously been a big part of this, of how bad things have gotten. You know, a lot of people won't believe him if he were to say that, but he should say it. I mean, and maybe he can convince himself to actually live up to the standard if he were to say that. I would certainly hope so, but.
That's a good point, John. That's a good point. If you say something publicly, you may have an obligation to abide by what you said. Otherwise, you're going to look foolish, you know?
Yeah. Well, let's hope. I mean, I would like to hear this sort of talk on both sides for sure. But yeah, I'm going to post this, I think this video pretty quickly. It'll be before the Trump speech at the RNC. So we'll have to see what happens.
All right. Thanks. Thanks everybody for listening. We're doing this on the fly. Things change very rapidly, as you well know.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Y'all have a good day.